It all started with Cook pulling the iPhone metrics because transparency has really been the biggest issue to start with Apple and iPhone. I think now what you're starting to see is that, ultimately demand that was thought to be up 2-3% now looks like it's going to be decreased, call it 5 to 7. I do think the overreaction is a bit sort of over its skis here in terms of what we've seen. I do think we'll kind of navigate through this white knuckle period. But look, net, this has really been the perfect storm. It's been the 1-2 punch in terms of the guidance, the iPhone metrics, and now what you're seeing in terms of data points coming out of Asia.
I mean, you're one of the few analysts that has hung in there in terms of bullish calls. A lot of them have been really negative on this move and the post-earnings reaction.
I mean, look, but if you go back 6, 9, 12 months ago, we were there as well, and it was one where a lot were kind of caving in. We continue to view Apple as when it trades at 12 times, a trough multiple. You look at fundamentals on services, you look at where this thing could re-rate to. We navigate through that period and stay bullish. We know the baby's going out with the bathwater here, but at this point, we stay bullish on Apple, even though right now it's the bearish sentiment. At this point, New York City cab drivers bearish on Apple.
Ed, what's your take on all of this? Do you think this is just the beginning of the end of people having such bullish views on Apple?
Well, you'll have trading opportunities. I agree there, ebb and flow. But yes, Apple's core business is the phone. The services derived from the phone. As we've been saying for several years now, that phone business is stalled and could be running into trouble here. And you're seeing the first signs of that now. So from an organic point of view, if you've covered handsets since '98 or so, this is nothing new. We've seen it before. They're just the latest handset OEM to run into this problem. And they're reacting pretty much like most of the other guys did when they hit this issue, and they'll scramble a little bit more aggressively probably next year and subsequently after that when it's clear that price cuts and more advertisement and changing colors isn't going to solve the problem.
So transparency is one thing. Clearly that shook investors, Dan. But the news reports, the flow since then has been very negative, including this new report about the lower priced phones in Japan, which seems to have backed up the negative view that demand really is slowing.
It's been an avalanche of bad news in terms of what you've seen. But ultimately, if you look at when they gave guidance relative to a lot of what we're seeing here, we think a lot of this has sort of been priced in terms of where they've guided. We could see this go down another, call it 4 or 5% in terms of unit decel. But ultimately, I think at this point, I think in numbers, it continues to be the streets maybe gotten a little over bearish in terms of reading through the supply chain data points.
Ed, if we got some improvements on the tone of trade between the US and China, could that be something that would create a short-term buying opportunity in sentiment and actual sales numbers for Apple?
It will in sentiment. I don't think it's going to help in this actual sales number. Just let's keep things in perspective here. The worst phone that Apple's released from a year-on-year sales point of view is the iPhone 6s, which was released in September 2015. It took almost 3 months for them to cut forecast for that. So they cut forecast about December 12th to their suppliers. So they got really solid sales for a couple of months. It started falling away, and then you saw the havoc that the decline in demand for that phone wreaked on both Apple and the food chain. This phone, they did it in 2 weeks. Two weeks after the XR was released, the slash guide. So this is much more significant. It isn't something you're going to be able to, to just shine on and pretend like it's not occurring. I think you're going to see Apple pre-announce lower numbers before they get even into March, given the arc of the curve here.